Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And firstly, can I just say how pleased I am to be here today, not only as the local member, but also as the Regional Transport and Roads Minister here in New South Wales. And can I just welcome everyone along here this morning to Bathurst. And I know that some people have travelled great distances to be here for your conference. But what makes it really exciting for me is the fact that in 45 years of conferences, this is the first time that you've actually been into a regional centre. So it is with great excitement and with great pleasure that we do have you here in the city of Bathurst. And the city of Bathurst is Australia's oldest inland settlement, and quite unique. Those people that have had the opportunity to be here in the past would see some of those heritage buildings that we've been able to maintain here in our city over the years. But importantly, it is a city that is growing. It is a city that is got great potential, and a city that is providing huge opportunities for people into the future. But in this room today, I'll acknowledge Howard Collins from Sydney Trains. I acknowledge Rob Mason, but I also acknowledge all of our dignitaries and all of our leaders here from industry, because at the end of the day, you are the future. You are the people that are building the next piece of the puzzle to ensure that this state is in a strong position when it comes to rail infrastructure here in New South Wales. And whether that be for passengers, whether that be for the movement of freight, it is critical investment that this government is making with the support of industry to ensure that we are taking it to a whole new level. And I think everybody knows that over the past few years, we've actually seen a resurgence back to rail. And I think that is the right thing to do. That is the right thing for the government to be investing in. And as you would have seen over the past number of years, that investment is continuing to ramp up year after year. And even this week, I had the opportunity to be in Sydney, and Minister Constance and I were both there talking at a pipeline infrastructure event. And it was just an opportunity to outline the government's big, bold vision over the next few years, and great opportunities for the investments that we are going to be making here in the state. I just want to just reiterate a couple of things on history, and I know Mark sort of took us back through it, but if you have a look at, from the time the line from Sydney to Parramatta opened in 1855, rail just played an essential role in connecting the state, beginning with lines across the Blue Mountains to Bathurst and across the Southern Highlands to Goulburn. And as many of you would know, New South Wales graziers, our farmers and our miners were the driving force behind that early expansion of rail, which is not surprising when we're getting our product from the paddock to the ports. And we all know that we've come a long way from where we've seen the bullock dray and the horse-drawn wagon in the past. And the rate of rail expansion at that time was breathtaking. And in that decade from 1870, the number of people travelling went from just under 800,000 to almost 5.5 million people. In the same decade, New South Wales rail miles more than doubled, from 339 to 849. The main Western Line reached Bathurst in 1876. And I'm delighted that the region's rail history is being reinvigorated. And the reason that I say it's being reinvigorated is because those people that came up on the train yesterday, getting off at the station, the government is actually reinvigorating that station here in the city of Bathurst. I mean, it is an iconic building. Is it an iconic building that is worth preserving? It is an iconic building that tells us the history of rail, and it's an iconic building that tells us about the importance of the way in which rail has expanded into regional communities over the years. But if you were down there, you also would have had the opportunity to see what the next investment is in that particular area, and it's actually a railway museum. So there's an old disused building down there not far away from the railway station, and it's been transformed into a brand new museum here for the city of Bathurst. Not only is it good for locals, but it's good for visitors, and it's going to actually showcase the history of rail in this area. And Bathurst is a railway town. Bathurst has a lot of connections back with our rail heritage, and importantly in that building, it's actually going to tell the personal stories of those that have been involved in rail over the decades. The other important thing is it's a good story too, because you've got the state government, you've got the federal government, you've got the local council. We've had John Holland, we've got Transport for New South Wales, we've got volunteers that are all been a part of actually seeing this new railway museum open in the city. And it's going to open early next year. But inside it as well, there's going to be a model railway as well that's going to actually tell us about the history of the Western Line. So it's going to be about 80 metres by about 40 metres inside the Railway Museum. But another significant attraction, but an important attraction to ensure that we tell the history and the importance of rail in this area. So if you get the opportunity next year when you are here, come back and actually see how that Railway Museum will be presented here in this community. The other thing is we've been able to get an old carriage. The old carriage sits out the front of where the Railway Museum is going to be. And those that know, we've got Ben Chifley's engine, which is also down at the railway station. So there's a lot of history just within that very small precinct about the importance and the history of rail in this town. And when I talk about Bathurst, and I'll probably focus a little bit more on Bathurst today, but that's significant when we're talking about the impacts that rail has had in regional communities right across this state. Also, I want to talk about today a little bit about where we are now and where we want to be into the future. And as I said, like today, I'm not only here as the member, but I'm also here as the Minister for Regional Transport and Roads. And it should be very clear from the outset that the government has actually put a greater focus, or has really shone the spotlight on regional transport and roads more than ever before. And as you would know, previously there was a Minister for Roads and there was a Minister for Transport, and they would cover transport and roads for the entirety of the state. What we've done now is we've actually separated that. It means now that there is a Minister for Transport and Roads, which is Minister Constance, and he looks after the metropolitan areas. So he'll look after roads and rail in the metropolitan areas, which is primarily the areas of Sydney, Wollongong, Newcastle, and the Blue Mountains local government areas. Everything outside of that fits in my space. So everything beyond those metropolitan areas fits in my area, which is pretty exciting because it actually allows me to go out there and actually now start to sell the benefits of the investment into our regions and actually talk to communities about the government's big, bold vision that we have, and to actually see those outcomes being delivered. When we talk about road and rail, I think sometimes we look at big projects and we say, oh, they're going to, they're big projects, they're making a difference, but I actually see it more than that. These are investments and these are projects that we are making that are going to allow that connectivity. They're going to allow, mostly, I believe, opportunity. It's about creating opportunity in those regions. And when I actually look at the investment that we're delivering, the investment since 2011 to just before this year, to 2018, saw the government in the regions invest $15 billion. I'll tell you how exciting it is. Just in this year alone, in the regions, there's $6.7 billion being invested. The following years, it's just going to continue to go up. And rail is going to be a critical part of that investment with the government's agenda that we're driving over the next few years. So it may sound, quite obvious, but I think it's an important separation that has been made. We're also going through an important restructure with transport as well, where we're actually, bringing them together. So transport and RMS are now, going to be brought together as one body. But that's important because what we want to do is to make sure that we're all talking on the same page. We don't want a bus turning up to a station and there's no train there for a couple of hours. We've got to be all talking on the one page so that there's that connection. So when they turn up, it's within a reasonable time frame of a train arriving. Same thing when the train comes back the other way, that there's a bus going to be timetabled up to actually ensure that people can then move to the next point of destination. So it's important opportunities like that we are creating in this whole brand new structure. Transport for New South Wales have also been working on a regional team which is also just focusing on the regions. And look, rail is just absolutely critical to all of that. And I say rail is just critical to actually building our regional centres, connecting our regional communities, allowing people to have access to our ports and our markets in the east. And we also recognise that rail offers real advantages in moving people and freight, from local connections to regional hubs through to nationally significant trade corridors. Now, one key advantage is that rail freight is up to 23 times more energy efficient than road freight and causes up to 19 times less emissions. Now, shifting from road to rail can also reduce road congestion from freight vehicles, and each freight train through Sydney takes 54 trucks off the roads, and for regional trains, this can increase to around 130 trucks. And that's why we're upgrading existing assets through our Fixing Country Rail program. And through our Fixing Country Rail program, we've invested more than $210 million. $210 million in more than 20 projects that are going to improve freight productivity on the network and also reduce the cost from getting it from the paddock through to market as well. And this is about supporting small businesses. We've also seen projects like passing loops, network upgrades, signalling systems and rail sidings occurring throughout the network. Now, some of the completed projects include the Moree East Intermodal Terminal siding and extensions to the grain sidings at Barellan and Hillston. The Hermidale multi-user siding is also under construction. Projects to reopen lines, also not currently operational, are also being funded through this program. We're currently doing a number of feasibility studies and looking at reinstating services. We're looking at a study on the Kandos to Golgong line, looking at completing the Golgong to Maryvale line. There's a study going on the Blaney to Demondrell line. So important studies that are hopefully going to see the opportunity again into the future to see those lines being utilised here in the state. And we're also making a major investment of over $60 million in the Junee to Griffith line. And by increasing the line's axle load capacity from 20 to 25 tonnes, it means we're able to increase the speeds, we're also able to reduce delivery times, and we're also able to reduce the costs for consumers and customers. Since 2011, we've also invested $1.65 billion in the country regional network. Now, the investment is providing a safer, more reliable and efficient rail system to support regional communities and businesses. Axle loads and speeds have been increased on some lines, and new and lengthened sidings are making the movement of grain more efficient. 173 level crossings have now been upgraded. Timber bridges are being replaced with low-maintenance structures. Expired timber sleepers are being replaced with low-maintenance steel or concrete sleepers. Over 780,000 tonnes of ballast have been laid on the track, and so it doesn't buckle in the summer heat. 422 kilometres of track has been converted to continuous welded rail. T-Max, a modern computer-based train control system, has been rolled out, improving safety and efficiency. And even the main Western Rail line running through this city and through to Orange and Dubbo and beyond is one of the busiest freight and passenger lines on the country regional network. And New South Wales has actually allocated $40 million for passing loops to improve the capacity and reliability on these key corridors. And earlier this year, and I see the team from John Holland here as well, earlier this year I had the opportunity to go out with them. Two key rail loops that have been created here at Rydal and at Georges Plains. But critical allowing trains of up to 1.5 kilometres in length to be able to move over to the loop that's been created, allowing more freight movement on the Western line, allowing passenger trains to also, pass those larger freight trains that at time to time, could be holding and slowing the network down. So important investments like this are critical in actually allowing the capacity for more freight and more passenger trains onto our lines as we go forward into the future. We've also announced another $20 million in this year's budget alone for passing loop design for Pelona, Pinecliff, Bunbury and Maryvale. We've also invested a new intermodal freight terminal at Tamworth with funding released to design of the rail connection. And this is the kind of investment that creates jobs, takes trucks off local roads and opens up new opportunities for regional communities to grow. We're also leading the charge for efficient and sustainable regional rail travel for passengers. And earlier this year, I know that Mark was mentioning it, but we did announce the purchase of a new regional rail fleet, which is going to be maintained at a purpose-built facility in Dubbo. And this is an investment of $1.26 million. But what's important there is the fact that these XPTs that we've got here in the state have been servicing our communities for almost 40 years. Servicing our community for 40 years. And what we're going to see is that the XPTs being replaced, the Endeavours being replaced, we're going to see Explorers being replaced, and this is just going to change the way in which travel is for those people living in regional centres around the state. But it means it's going to make it more comfortable as well. It's about making sure that we can have a modern fleet, one that is going to be more comfortable as a part of the new fleet being rolled out. But the other exciting thing is the fact, and I only announced it probably about a month ago, is the fact that they're going to also be bi-mode technology, which for most of you here, you would know what that means. They can go from a diesel train and switch on to an electric train when they hit the electric network. So another important investment that the government has made into the creation and the building of these new trains into the future. Now, they will be rolled out from 2023, so we're still a couple of years away from getting them. But I make no apology as well in saying that those XPTs that, are old, and they are old because I can tell you now that some of them have, over the last little while, have actually had some cracks in the pins, which have, created a bit of fun as well in actually getting them, getting pins replaced and getting them back on the network. But I can say this, I don't believe either that we should actually get rid of the XPTs completely, those old ones, and throw them out the door and actually send them off to the scrap heap. We should be looking at trying to say, hey, can we now capitalise on them to ensure that they can now be used as a second life, second chance, to actually use them to even further enhance rail opportunities for people in regional communities. So that is something that, as the Minister, I want to see how we can even use that even further and more into the future, because it's about connecting some of those isolated communities into the regional centres. Everyone used to think about rail in the past about going from a regional centre through to central. Well, people have moved. It's not necessarily that anymore. They just want to get into a regional hub. So how can we create those opportunities differently into the future as well? Can I just mention the rail maintenance facility in Dubbo too? That's quite important because not only is that during the construction phase going to see something like 200 jobs being created, but once it's built, it also means that the XPTs and that will be maintained at that facility, and that'll actually create ongoing another 50 jobs at that particular site. But this is also important because I know Mark was mentioning then, about opportunities for, having the right skills, but this is where the opportunity will be for traineeships and apprentices to be involved in that new facility into the future. We're also, when we talk about weekday services, we just introduced a new service not long ago, a new service from Griffith all the way through to Central as well. It's a midweek service, but one that actually came with a lot of excitement into that community. And I actually make that point because I put my hand up to run for the seat of Bathurst probably in 2011. But I actually did it because I actually felt as though we were missing out on a service. And I actually felt at the time that, we were told that you couldn't have a train service. And that's the reason I put my hand up at the time. So it sort of comes around the whole circle, doesn't it? You go from fighting for transport, then you end up in the role as transport at some point later on. But when I put my hand up to run, it was like, we didn't have a daily train service. And I used to hear all the excuses as to why it couldn't happen. 1, there was no rolling stock available. 2, if you got it, nobody's going to use it. So I actually become a bit of a dog to a bone and went, you know what, I've had enough of hearing that. There's no point in banging my head anymore in actually fighting for that service. I might as well put my hand up and have a crack at it and see if I can actually get it. Fortunate enough, got elected and was able to deliver it. But you know what? That service has been, which is just rolled out across the state when we're seeing these services being introduced. People are using it. The patronage numbers are fantastic. People are using it for day trips. They might go to Central for the day. It might be for a medical appointment. It might be for a recreational activity. It might be going to just catch up with family and friends. But importantly, it allows them to go down in the day and back in the day as well. You know, something that, you know, metro people take for granted because they've got that level of service and that level of access each and every day. Because of the success of that, we actually, and as Mark said, not long ago, we actually rolled out a second one. So, you know, who would have thought that, you know, by having one in 2012, that 7 years later, we're now rolling out a second passenger train service. But that gives people now options. It gives people choices. So you can catch one in the morning at 5:46, or you can catch another one that leaves at 7:30 in the morning. But having the two choices just makes that travel critical for people in regional communities, even to come back. One leaves at 6 in the afternoon or 6 in the evening, and one leaves at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But just gives people options. It gives people choice. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to go to Singleton, and I went to Singleton, and well, actually, I'll come back because I'll just go back to the Bathurst Bullet because I think this is important. When that second service was introduced, the excitement that actually occurred from stopping at some smaller communities. We had a community Rydal and a community at Taranah. The train stopped there for the very first time, and I'll tell you what, when you see country people, they don't necessarily want a lot, but when they get a service like that stopping in their very own backyard, I'll tell you what, they are grateful and they are pleased that they are not forgotten. And critically, the excitement and the cheers and the way in which that town all came down to celebrate the introduction of that service was amazing. And, you know, that importantly will make a difference when it comes to our travel for those customers. Yesterday, I had the opportunity also to be at Singleton, as I was saying, and there was a group there that had been fighting for 2 more train services. And they've been fighting for 2 more train services from Singleton to Newcastle for the last decade. So I went up there yesterday to announce that there's going to be 2 more passenger services that are going to be operating from Singleton to Newcastle from the 5th of January. But you know what's good about that? Is not only is it creating opportunity in those communities and giving people more choice as well, but I'll tell you who's empowered as well by that, is the staff. It's the staff at TrainLink as well that actually can see, you know, what this provides for our customers. And for those people from Transport for New South Wales in this room here today, I say to you, thank you, because you are critical at the end of the day in being that interface with the customers each and every day. And where we can keep providing opportunity and where we can open up new passenger services, I tell you what, the excitement there is not only for the customer, but also for our Transport for New South Wales staff, who do an amazing job as well. The other one, I'll just quickly, Millthorpe. Millthorpe, just down the road, small community, same thing. Used to be double line track. They pulled out one 30 years ago, pulled out one of the tracks. Couldn't get the train to stop there because there was no platform that took them out to the second line. Well, you know what? We created a platform that is now built out from the platform to the second line, and it's now an on-demand service for the community of Millthorpe. Small community, a couple of thousand people live there, but you know what? Makes a difference to the way in which people can travel when it comes to using rail services. This week as well, I'll mention one more too, and I mentioned the staff, but I'll also mention a lady up at Moree, up at the station there. For the very first time in about 30 years, we've got a rail attendant, put back on at that station. And the fact that, someone is there just to welcome customers in the morning or commuters in the morning, it just makes a big difference to country people. Visitors as well. Let's not forget it. So not only for the locals that use it, it's for visitors that come into our towns as well to actually get the right advice as to where the best places might be to go and enjoy as well. The Inland Rail, the Melbourne to Brisbane Inland Rail will mean that we can connect all modes needed to move freight from the farm gate to the factory and the mines quickly, reliably and competitively. And already you can see the opportunities that this is creating in the regions. Even this week, I had the opportunity to go to Parkes, and I was actually there for the official opening of the largest logistics terminal in regional Australia. Pacific National have made that investment into that particular site. But I'll tell you what, it's a good story. A good story when, communities are suffering from drought at the moment, and you've got a company like Pacific National that are investing in that particular site. But I'll tell you what, in 2 years to actually see a paddock that's gone from being a sheep paddock to now becoming the largest logistics terminal here in regional Australia is just quite an amazing transformation. But incredible as well to know that it's creating jobs in that local community, it's driving the local economy, but even they have even to know that this financial year they'll have 50,000 shipping containers that'll be put onto the line. But they'll also have 100,000 next year, but they've got the capacity to build it up to 450,000 shipping containers. And they had that first double-stacked train that left a couple of weeks ago, 1.8 kilometres in length, double-stacked all the way through the Nullarbor, all the way to Perth. So just incredible opportunities that we're providing here in the state of New South Wales. Importantly as well, places like that where we're seeing investment, the government actually made that the first special activation precinct here in regional, one of the first special activation precincts in regional New South Wales. But this is also about making sure where there's an opportunity to open up investment, where there's an opportunity to increase or make the pathway easier for businesses to go into that community, we're doing that. And this is important when you're looking at Inland Rail, you're looking at that terminal happening in Parkes. It also means that we're able to create the opportunity there for that investment for that area, but also to speed it up and get rid of the red tape and allow further investment to be off the back of what is happening in that particular area. Faster rail, making regional travel faster, safer and easier also brings huge economic potential to New South Wales regional towns and cities by making it easier to invest, easier to do business and easier to build a lifestyle and visit our regional towns. Now, in December of 2018, the New South Wales Government committed to preparing a fast rail strategy, a blueprint for how a fast rail network could be delivered. And as a first step, we're providing $295 million over 4 years to start early works for the fast rail network. And this includes a route between Sydney and the Central West. And we know transformative infrastructure, like fast rail, cannot be built overnight. But we also recognise the importance of investment that provides immediate results while moving us closer to our overall vision for the network. And our fast rail strategy will help join the dots between early wins and potential long-term gains to help us come with an overall blueprint on how a fast rail network can be delivered. And as Sydney and our state moves into the next decade, fast rail can enable generational change in the way we move around New South Wales. I just also want to just touch on very quickly, before I finish up as well, Heritage Railway too, pretty exciting. And I know that Rob Mason's here with Transport Heritage, and just to see the opportunities that are being delivered here at the moment. I mean, one of my pet favourites at the moment is the Zigzag Railway. I just want to see the Zigzag Railway up and running and operational once again. Used to bring 60,000 visitors into the Lithgow community each and every year. The government's actually given them now about $2.7 million to get the Zigzag Railway restarted. But I tell you what, they're getting closer. Next year, they're hoping to have those trains back on the tracks for testing and commissioning and trialling. And then hopefully next year in the second quarter or the second half of next year, they'll have passenger trains operational again. I mean, everyone loves heritage trains. I mean, everyone that I speak to, you know, I mean, there's probably some of you are probably train spotters here as well. I couldn't believe when I went to that Goldgong to Kandos one, that was when the Garrett was going out there, I was just driving out there and saw all these people. I didn't know it was a bit creepy to start with, but there was all these people were sort of in the bushes right next to the train line. Then you go across a bridge and there'd be a stack of people there. So it was just amazing. But you know, people love those trains. Families love those trains. Kids love those trains. So it's important that we're providing opportunities for in heritage to do that. Even our stations, some of our stations, you know, even the commitment now to, you know, repurpose some of our stations to ensure that they don't fall away. You know, so we've actually increased the investment into our stations over the last couple of years to make sure that, you know, they can be, you know, repurposed in a local community for, might be a community group that can use them, but it's better to use them and actually try and, you know, work on, we're not going to do them all overnight, but the thing is, we've actually got a program of rolling out to improve stations where communities can come along and actually use the facility. Better to use it than actually see it fall away and be deteriorated over years. It seems, you know, it seems very clear to me that, you know, rail is definitely here to stay. I mean, you know, and over the years we've seen our graziers, we've seen our farmers, we've seen our miners all see the significance of rail in regional communities. And the New South Wales government shares that same vision. We share the same vision and we have the same enthusiasm for rail to grow here in this state. It's about unlocking that economic potential here in New South Wales. It's about supporting our vision for a vibrant and regional economies or strong regional economies in New South Wales. It's about the capacity to know that, you know, we are creating investment, not only for people today, but for the future. We are providing an investment that is a once-in-a-generational investment that's going to transform the lives of people living in our regional communities forever. And together, you know, government and everyone in this room, we all have a role to play to ensuring that that happens. Thank you.